there's a lot of people on the streets right now that are being arrested for homophobic chants, but it's because they're saying we're allowed to preach it. It's from the Bible.
Yeah.
And it's kind of blowing up on TikTok. You know, a lot of it's just. And then yesterday, obviously, you've gone and told me, well, it's actually there's a translation error.
Yeah.
And so maybe we could just start with that, because to speak about how in the Bible, because gay people have been persecuted for basically 2,000 years under something which is basically a mistranslation.
Yeah.
So if we could maybe start there, that would be amazing.
Homophobia finds its roots in the Bible, and because of how people, you know, cite the Bible, they say Leviticus. And so if the Bible says it's the case, then it must be the absolute truth. The key thing is this. The thing that people cite is always Leviticus. And we've got 1822, and that's the main thing that people cite.
I first heard that in Family Guy. It was Stewie that like made a joke about something gay. It was like Leviticus 1820. And that's what the first time I ever heard it.
And that's where it always comes from. But the thing is, this is because people think that the Bible is a static book, and it's not. It is a reflection of its culture, because it is translated over and over again. And we started with, obviously, I mean, the Bible was not a book that came out of like, you know, the Bible was not put together and published in like 34 AD, the year after, you know, Jesus or Ishmael, whatever you want to call him, you know, was taken bodily up to heaven.
Yeah.
It's a collection of scriptures across a collection of cultures and countries written by a bunch of different people that were eventually collected together by the government of the time, which more or less would have been the Holy Roman Empire. It more or less started in Aramaic, which is a very dense language. In Aramaic, for example, there are a lot of different words for love. So you know how
like in Japanese, there's like 4 or 5 different versions of saying love.
Precisely.
It's more complex and you can express yourself more.
Yeah, and there's nuance, because like, for example, like if I was to say to you, I love you, I wouldn't mean it, well, I could mean it romantically, but I would mean
it's not like a lover.
Yeah, I would mean it like you're a brother, you're a friend. Yeah. If I was on the street and, you know, I was walking with my, let's say, biological brother, and I said I love you, passers-by hearing that could take umbrage with it, and if they are homophobic,
think you're lovers,
and be abusive. But it's like, no, he's my biological brother. I didn't mean it like that. Not that I would excuse.
mean it like that.
Yeah, but do you see what I mean?
Yeah. How easy that one word can be misinterpreted by people hearing it.
Precisely. Yeah. The Bible's been translated hundreds of times. Each language has its different applications of various words. It was originally in Aramaic. Then we've got Greek and we've got Latin. Through the translation of this into English, things are lost. Let's not forget, everyone who's ever published a Bible has had a political agenda, and up to and including, and beyond, the King James Bible in the sort of mid 1600s, where he had a very clear political agenda because he hated Catholics, he hated witches. I mean, he wrote literally 2 books on how to hunt and find witches.
Wow. What were they called?
One was the Malleus Maleficarium, and the other one I'm afraid I've forgotten.
The Malleus Maleficarium.
Malleus Maleficarium,
wow.
Which means witch hammer, basically. People forget the Bible is full of supernatural, what we consider supernatural elements. There are witches, dragons, unicorns, and zombies in it.
In the Bible?
Yeah, and people forget that kind of thing.
Okay.
And before that, the Third Nicene Council in like roughly 303 AD, where they very deliberately took reincarnation out as a Christian doctrine.
Yes, you said, yeah.
Because people were not scared of going to hell so much.
Yeah.
But reincarnation took the edge off of that because you get a second chance or maybe a third chance, whatever.
Yeah.
You know,
easier to control as well if you think this is your one life and you have to get it right.
Exactly.
Otherwise, these leaders won't let you in. Or
we have political translations, one of which happened in as recently as 1946, shortly after the Second World War. And where we see this, like I said, Leviticus 18:22, key word that was translated from the Greek incorrectly is a word called arsenokoitai. And basically, arsen, now I apologise for my Greek That's as good as I can get with the Greek pronunciation.
Yeah.
Arsen meaning male, and koitai meaning bed, but not bed as in the one you sleep in, as in the sexual bed. Okay. When you ask someone, did you sleep with them? You don't mean did they literally catch 40 winks with them. You mean so it's bed in that sense.
Well, okay. Yeah.
So it literally means, so arsenokoitai means male bedders or those who lie with men, but it's a compound word. Okay, so arsen and koitai didn't exist in other Greek texts before Paul used it. Okay, Paul the Apostle. Okay, so Paul probably coined it himself, and like I said, it basically means with a male as with women. But here's the thing that shows how it's been misrepresented and misused, because it's not used anywhere else in Greek literature ever. This word is almost like made up for that version of the Bible.
Wow.
And scholars disagree on what it means. Basically, as it has worked over time, and I've got a timeline here of the different meanings of it as it's been gone through, it almost certainly means one of the following. Okay, so male temple prostitutes, so not common on the corner cheap prostitutes, temple prostitutes, like almost like courtesans, like people who had a social rank slept. Okay, exploitative sexual practices. Now, this is the one that most scholars agree on. This is what it means, and by that I mean forcing your slave to have sex with you, abusive sex, and I don't just mean, I mean abuse on top of that, and basically, or pederasty as it would have been. Now, so here's the thing. It does not mean the kind of, now we find this generally abhorrent today, but there was a culture, especially in ancient Greece, of intergenerational sex being not just accepted, but something that would be almost aspired towards. So it's not meaning that.
What does that mean? Like sleeping with your family?
No, meaning more like, so if there was a respected elder in town or in your city state, that if he took a shine to you and you were a younger person, it would be an honor to have coitus with them. Okay, so this is not what it's referring to.
Okay.
This is a reference to abusive. Well, it is basically as we recognize it. There's also another way of taking it, or something called malakoi, which kind of means soft men, and it's basically wealthy people exploiting economically attractive, effeminate men, so paying them for money because they're desperate.
Okay. So by the way, just to confirm, so this word is one of the words in Leviticus. This is
what's been translated, and where we get this idea that it's a sin for a man to lie with a man, and this is what we're sort of exploding here, because that's not the intention. So it wasn't until the 1946 version of the Bible, translation of the Bible, that introduced the term homosexuality as a certainly as a negative construct. But this idea, because remember,
not until 1946.
1946.
Wow.
And so when we look at something like this, we can't neglect or ignore this idea of, remember, this is Greece. So ancient Greece, there was a culture of, not purely, but largely a culture of, men would sleep with men because for pleasure, and also purely for pleasure. Obviously, you can't get a man pregnant that way, but the key thing here is that men sleeping with men was aspirational. Women were considered lesser. They couldn't vote. They weren't allowed to say particularly.
Wow.
They were not purely, but they were largely breeding stock. So Plato and Aristotle, who've got some very dodgy things to say on this by the modern point of view, they would never consider this idea of, Aristotle and Plato, Socrates and Aristotle almost certainly had sex, and it's a very good chance that Plato and Aristotle had sex. Not all three of them, but Aristotle and Socrates. Socrates taught Aristotle, who taught Socrates.
So you're saying that mentor had sex with disciples?
Yes.
Wow.
Not all. It wasn't a given, but often.
Yeah.
And so Socrates taught Plato, and they all certainly, when they talked about love, there was a physical aspect to it. It wasn't the purpose of it. It wasn't like Socrates was sharing his knowledge for sexual favors. I wasn't there, but based on the writings, that was a way of expressing gratitude and a way of expressing that deep intellectual love would express itself physically as well. And Aristotle almost certainly was the same with Plato, even though they had fallings out and all that jazz.
Wow.
And so what we've got to look at is this idea of the arsenokoitai is a very different thing in Greece when, and again, the word didn't exist there, but the idea of homosexuality didn't exist. It was just the sort of standard thing that happened.
It's almost hard for us to even get our head around the idea that homosexuality didn't exist, because it's almost like that's a concept that's been created afterwards. It was just normal before.
It was just
thousands of years ago.
Exactly.
It wasn't seen that being gay wasn't a thing.
Yeah, and they would have looked at heterosexuality, what we call that now, as really weird.
Almost like how people that are homophobic see being gay, maybe it's almost like something that repulses them or something.
Exactly.
Wow.
It's the idea of like sodomites and things like that. You know, it's basically a confusion of the issue. For example, in the latest versions of the Bible, there's a passage about archangels sitting at the right hand of God. Now that has subsequently been, for the most part, translated, deliberately changed, so that left-handed people aren't offended. Basically, it's now been changed to archangels sit at the hand of God.
Okay.
Now that's not a huge paradigm shift in society, but you've also got to look back and say, right, well, time was, if you were left-handed, the left-hand path is the path of the devil, and people were literally tortured and trained and forced to use their right hand, even if they were naturally left-handed.
Yeah.
Nowadays, most people don't care. The left hand was used, I kid you not, exclusively used for basically wiping your posterior after defecating.
Wow.
And they thought, you can't write with that, you can't do anything holy with that hand.
Wow. Yeah,
because there was limited understanding. So there was no concept of the same sexual orientation that we have today. So this arsenokoitai, how it gets translated, is sometimes willfully and sometimes accidentally mistranslated as being that action of a man sleeping with a man is wrong and against the wishes of God. Now, apart from the fact that, and this is a really basic common sense argument here, apart from anything else, homosexual people cannot breed. Okay, a man sleeping with a man, you can't produce a child from that, and yet homosexuality still persists. And so, if God was really opposed to homosexuality, they wouldn't be able to continue existing, because homosexuality is bred by heterosexual people as we recognise it. So there's the common sense argument, but also this idea of it being a label, a stigma that's been perpetuated and created by people who need to create fear to control them. You segregate, you divide and conquer is the ancient rule. So basically, Paul the Apostle was almost certainly talking about.
And Paul was part of the Bible? Or
Paul was one of the disciples, yeah.
Okay.
And Paul was almost certainly referring to what we would recognise now as Greco-Roman. Certainly he would be referring to that. But what he is definitely not talking about, and we can say this with an alarming degree of actually based on the sort of truth that has come through these translations, is that Paul was not talking about loving, consensual relationships between a man and another man. Okay, there's basically no chance of that being the case, and it's critical that we understand that, because this idea of it's a sin for a man to lie with a man as you would with a woman is not what was being said, and I don't just mean that morally and ethically. I mean literally. Paul was not saying that. Now, there's no record that I'm aware of Paul having a wife or anything. I mean, Jesus travelled around with 12 men and 1 woman. Now. And also in Jesus' time, if it's a whole different world where being homosexual wasn't even a thing, is there a chance that even Jesus himself or Joshua would have expressed his love to men with the act of bedding them? Well, here's the thing, okay? And I'm not, like I said, I wasn't there, so I can't say for certain. But Jesus was a teacher, and that was a way of expressing gratitude. And this, you've got to remember, this is 12 men traveling in the desert, going from place to place together. Okay? Now, like I said, if you believe that Jesus was a virgin and didn't have any relations, Fine, okay, that's part of your faith. But in the context of Jesus, Ishwa, whatever you want to call him, as a male in that time, it would not have been remotely unusual for him to be sexually inclined towards men. Okay,
or his disciples, like you said, like
or his disciples
Socrates did with potentially his.
Now, like I said, I'm not saying he did that, so
no.
I'm not.
What you're saying is it's an actual potential because of the times and the way that they operated and shared love. Exactly,
in the context he was in, it would have been more unusual for him to have had any sexual leanings towards women. That would have been statistically less probable.
Wow, this is mind-blowing information.
Okay,
and it's kind of, there's no way that this can't resonate because it's actually the truth of that time. We're not saying that he was out here, doing gangbangs with men, but we're saying that it was a completely different cultural time where, like you said, intellect and love was shown through that act with men.
And sexual divisions then, if you like, or sexual preferences then, were not labelled or thought of in the same way then at all. It's as simple as that. And we're talking about, that entire geographical area. I'm not talking about the rest of the world. I'm talking about that geographical area. And, the fact that, Paul travelled to Greece and all that stuff. These are all places within range. All these, and the Roman Empire was massively influenced by ancient Greece. They loved it. They wanted to basically be it, really. So again, I'm not saying who slept with who, and I'm not saying that Jesus or Ishwa did fancy men. I'm not saying that at all. I'm saying in the cultural zeitgeist he was in, it would not have been unusual for that to have been the case. And so we've got, in 1822, you shall not lie with a male as with a woman, it is an abomination. And so this got revised, like I said. And then in
that's the English. That's what's made all the homophobic.
That's what has come to be. Yes.
Can you read that again? Say that again.
Yeah. So you shall not lie with a male as with a woman. It is an abomination.
Well,
that's the literal translation
that they created for us. And so, what would you say the actual truthful translation of that would have been?
Well, I'm going to have to sort of paraphrase a bit, but you shall not lie with, you shall not tolerate abusive sex, rape, and paedophilia. That's the closest I can get to the modern tongue, which is a completely different thing. There's nothing there about exclusively the same gender sleeping with each other is wrong. Okay, nothing like that at all. Because in 1946 it got basically literally translated in, you shall not lie with a homosexual as with a woman, it's an abomination.
that's the latest translation. Say that again.
You shall not lie with a homosexual as with a woman is an abomination.
Wow.
This is the revised standard version from 1946.
Even though the word homosexual wouldn't have even been a concept that existed when the Bible was first created.
Precisely. So
that's undeniable.
Yeah. So the translation shifted the interpretation from a specific act of probably male anal sex that was not consensual. Probably, almost certainly, he was referring to like cult-like activity where you were subsumed into a cult and forced to engage with this. Apart from on top of paedophilia,
which I'm guessing would have been a big thing that was going on at that time. And they were trying to protect people from basically being great.
Yeah. Basically, this revised standard edition and editions before has been the rallying cry for basically fear, terror, and control. For the most part, with very few exceptions, religions run on a function of how do we deprive people of thinking for themselves? How do we deprive people of pleasure? How do we tell them they can only get salvation through us? And we've gone, just in this conversation, from an apostle saying it's wrong to abuse someone sexually to an entire way of life is wrong and must be persecuted for it. And so, this has become a matter of division and shaming people and, again, control. Because you never get a dictatorship picking on the majority. It's always, let's find the smallest group we can find, more or less, persecute them. They are to blame for everything, and thus you'll get everyone whipped up into a hateful frenzy, and you can control that. And so homosexuality became...
What would you say if you had a really angry homophobic Christian in front of you now? What would your message be? Like, would you say you really need to, if you want to follow, because I would say if you really want to follow this teaching, we should respect it enough to make sure you're getting the truthful translation, right?
Yeah, basically, I would say actually take stock and think. Simple logic. The scriptures closer to the time of the person you are claiming to follow say this. They don't say that. You know, they don't say persecute someone because they're homosexual or because they sleep with a man. They are saying that it's wrong to abuse someone sexually. And when you consider, you know...
Wow, that's such a different message.
Yeah,
like
completely.
Basically protecting people or PDF files or that kind of stuff, that's actually like encoded in the truthful Bible, but they've switched it around and said like if you're gay, you're disgusting, you're an abomination. But and they're actually completely different. And what's blown me away is the idea that homosexuality wasn't even a concept in Joshua's day. It wasn't even a concept at all. So how could it have been wrote about? Yeah. And when you know that it's been chopped up and edited for hundreds of years, no wonder there's people now outside train stations shouting at gay people because they believe that it's worked. Their manipulation of the Bible has worked perfectly. It's made us into savages ourselves. You know, like that we hateful of each other.
Well, I mean, if we were to sit here and list all the types of people the Bible tells you to persecute and kill, we'd be here all night talking about that. It is a long list.
And the Quran.
And the Quran as well. Yeah, absolutely. So someone called Kathy Baldock, Ed Oxford, I believe their name was, they did some research into this and why there was this shift. And they basically found out these sort of hitherto unnamed people who put out the revised standard version in 46 were warned. They were warned very clearly and very explicitly. If you put this word in, it's going to have repercussions.
Wow.
And they did it anyway. So again...
Quite satanic in nature then, isn't it? Like the inversion of, like the flipping of the truth of what the sacred teachings of the Bible...
Yeah. And you've got to remember, the word homosexual has only been around since about 1869. That's when it was coined. And you've got to remember, again, it wasn't offensive at the time. Because it comes from the Latin, homo, okay, meaning the same.
Or the same, okay.
Well, in this instance. And sexual, so the same sexual. And then in 1989, it was reversed back into the new Revised Standard Edition, back to you shall not lie with a male as with a woman. It is an abomination. Wow. Which still carries exactly the same thing. I mean, it's almost tomato. It's like, because what is the homosexual act generally, in the male sense? Man sleeping with a man. So this is still saying, if you sleep with a man, if you lie with a man the way you would with a woman, it's still an abomination. So you've taken out a technical term and put in common parlance, if you like. What has been mistranslated most of all is this idea of it's not about the commonality of the gender sleeping with each other, it's about the consent.
Okay.
And Paul was talking about the consent.
Don't go raping people, don't do anything like that.
Yeah.
Like and he wasn't saying whether it's man or woman, it was about protection. And
well, it's interesting you say that, because Paul almost certainly in this instance was only talking about male sex, but he was talking about non-consensual male sex.
Okay.
Because in those days, again, I hate to say this, but women were not regarded with such high value. Okay, so he wasn't even talking about raping women.
I've just had the light bulb moment. So he's saying a man shall not grape another man because we're the shit. So don't go on doing that to each other. And like that's why he didn't even bring up women. Because otherwise it's like, why wouldn't he say, and a man shouldn't a woman? Because sorry, but you wasn't even significant enough at that time to be brought up. So it's actually to protect other men because they were on that same...
Yeah, it's certainly the valid perspective.
Is that kind of... Yeah.
Yeah. Now, again, like I said, so you got to remember, Jesus literally, obviously, presumably he loved his mum based on, we know about the Bible, Mary, and he had Mary Magdalene going around with him. Now, from a Freudian perspective, hanging at the one woman you consent to hang out with, same name as your mum. Just saying, Freud would have loved that.
Freud.
But, like I said, he did hang out with predominantly men. No matter how you argue with that, again, I'm not trying to start any holy conflagrations here. Statistically, you can say, right, well, Jesus was not giving the direct good stuff, if you like, from God to women. He had 12 male disciples. Now, maybe that's been retroactively changed by the Roman Empire, which was incredibly phallocentric and sexist. I don't know. Like I said, I wasn't there. But if you take the Bible on some level of face value, Jesus chose 12 disciples, and they were all men. Mary Magdalene obviously was a disciple, and again, we'll do another thing on her at some other time. But what's critical is the mainstream Bible, if you like, had Jesus only giving his teachings directly. Obviously, he went amongst the people, but directly to 12 other men, because men were the people who were considered at the time to be of, if you like, of holy stock who could handle it.
Wow. Yeah.
Okay, so there's very probably a version of the Bible where Mary Magdalene takes proper center stage, because there's a lot of evidence that Mary Magdalene was the one disciple who really understood Jesus and actually properly did grok what he was talking about.
Mm-hmm.
But the Holy Roman Empire couldn't have that, because like we just got, this idea of women being in charge was alien to them. There's lots of cultures around the world who were and continue to be run by women as being the wise and cool heads, but Rome, never happening. Never happening. Women were more or less breeding stock in Rome as it was. They were only slightly less what we would consider homosexual than the ancient Greeks. So you've got to take into account Paul would be addressing men, not women so much. There's also a fairly good chance, because the apostles were only human. If Mary Magdalene was the one who got it, there's a good chance they were probably quite jealous of her. Simple as that. And I don't mean sexually, because I'm not implying that Jesus and Mary got together, although it's possible. I mean, I don't know. But at the same time, Paul is talking about men here. And he's talking about, like you said, sort of protecting the sort of sexual sanctity of men.
Wow, that's a real light bulb, massive moment. Because that's when Leviticus comes up, I do think, why would the Bible only talk about man on man? But actually, like, the light bulb moment it's because man on man was so sacred to them that it was wrong to go around and grape another one. So they actually wrote that in the Bible, a man shouldn't go around and like take it unconsentedly from another man. Without their consent of any kind, and that whether that be a young child, or even a and taking advantage. Like I said, one of the translations very much works as taking economic advantage. So if you're a wealthy, lecherous old man and someone's poor and a male that's poor and effeminate, that's wrong as well. Taking advantage. Don't bed that person in to try and make money. But then the reason that it's not also mentioned in the Bible, like a man shouldn't, bed a woman, is simply because of the standard of women. It wasn't even happening. It was not of that time to do it, only for breeding.
And you got to remember,
it's massive.
And sexually you can't really win in the Bible, because what is original sin? It's sex. The original sin is sex. So in order to propagate the species, you will automatically take on spiritual debt to God, because you've committed the sin, even though God was the one who created the sort of binary reproduction cycle. So I don't really, but like I said, so Paul's talking about not taking advantage sexually of men of any stripe or any age, if you like.
Wow.
So again, nothing to do with homosexuality as we recognize it, because that label was scientific to start with. Okay, comes from the Latin homo and sex. It has become a slur, and because that's the funny thing, that homophobes, not being the brightest people, right? Let's put it this way. I assume you have heard at some point in culture someone homophobic going up to someone and saying, "Oh, you're a homo."
Of course,
yeah. Homo means the same. That slur literally is you saying, "Oh, you're the same as me." These are not people who are particularly bright.
Yeah.
So again, like I said, so again, the sort of dance of language through time has been an excuse for so many evils. I mean, look, if you don't mind, I've got the list here of.
Yeah, please.
So this is how, and this is a drop in the bucket, but this is how that passage in Leviticus has been translated over time. Okay, so
perfect.
1382 in what's called the Wycliffe Bible. Okay, arsenokoitai was translated as lechery against kind, lechery against the male gender. Okay, now lechery more or less has come across to our modern age. Lechery is not consensual. Lechery is not pleasant or good or positive. Yeah. Imagine if that lechery against kind had been kept. Okay. We'd have understood. Right. It's about sexual oppression, if you like, of males.
Nasty thing. Anything just wrong.
Yeah. Not consensual. Not actual love.
Pleasure.
Exactly.
Okay. Cool. And that's not really specifically of kind means of men.
Of men, men would have been the kind. Yeah.
But this is the thing, people don't even think of that. Like, you have to think of the time it was written in. So then if they're saying of kind, they're saying of, like me, the author, who's a man.
Yeah, precisely. Because it's Paul, isn't it? It's Paul.
It's important to really understand that.
Yeah, I mean, not to, but there are plenty of people who follow the Abrahamic religions who've never read their holy book at all. You know, so right. So the next one, 1535, the Tyndale Bible, abusers of themselves with mankind.
Okay.
Abusers, very deliberate pointed word there, because if two homosexual men, gay men, whatever the partners want to use, have sex with each other and it's consent, it's not abuse. So again, a very, very different connotation there. Okay. And again, mankind. Notice there's a linguistic arrogance there, because when we say mankind these days, we're not excluding women or non-binary.
It's humans.
Mankind means humans.
Yeah.
In those days, it meant mankind.
Okay.
Okay. Okay.
So no abuse of man. It's not saying
No, it's
if a man and a man sleep together, you're disgusting. It's just saying no abuse of men.
No, yeah, exactly.
So
or sexual abuse.
And that was 1535?
1535.
Okay.
So our next one, 1611, King James Version, he actually keeps it the same, because he was not a fan of,
Really?
Then we come to 1946. Now we're talking about in English now. Obviously, I'm not talking about other countries in the world.
Yeah.
We've got the Revised Standard Edition where it's homosexuals.
What a bold jump.
Massive ideological jump. Yeah. And like I said, researching it, they were warned. So presumably maybe the translators had an agenda. Maybe the people who are paying the translator had an agenda. That is kind of a bit lost to history.
Yeah.
Or, my research couldn't uncover it.
Yeah.
But here's, right, so get this. So 1946, homosexuals, okay? 1982, the New King James Version. Don't know why it's the New King James Version, but there you go. It's changed to sodomites.
Wow.
Sodomites. So that basically, being a homosexual, okay, you can argue which one's broader, because you can be homosexual and not engage in sex. There's that. Sodomites, it's any sexual act of that type of.
And even to women, right? Or only to men?
Well, here's the thing. That's a very good question. Because in 1982, did they accidentally, in a really backwards way, broaden the horizon to include women? Now, obviously, women aren't equipped to. Well, I suppose they could wear a strap on, not to make it. But the act of sodomy, full stop, is.
Okay.
So again, that changes it as well, because, okay, not to be indelicate, but a man and a woman can engage in sodomy, and it doesn't make the man homosexual or the woman a lesbian by any stripe. Yeah. And notice that even when language changed, so the word lesbian came in, which again is from the Greek, because of the Isle of Lesbos and the poetry of Sappho and this idea of women loving women. Okay, that's obviously a relatively modern term as well. Yeah. And that's not mentioned at all in the Bible. Okay, so we've got that.
That's
now,
too powerful.
Well, yeah. And then 1989, just 7 years later, the new Revised Standard Edition changes it to say male prostitutes and sodomites.
So in 7 years,
somehow it gets split, because you add in a whole new thing. Male prostitutes and sodomites, not the same thing.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
So there's that. Next, 2001. Now.
Wow, updates and translations all the way up to 2001.
Oh no, we've got up to 2020. So wait. Right. So, men who practice homosexuality, 2001. So just 24 years ago, the Bible is saying homosexuality is evil, basically.
And is there a sentence? And how is that?
Oh yeah. If men who basically, instead of male who lays with a male, males who practice homosexuality, it's an abomination. So all these are just for clarity.
It ends with it's of an abomination,
except for the earlier ones.
Where it's actually just about protection.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay. So it's King John where it all became
King James.
Where it all became
Well, King James is the one who you got to remember in 1535. We've only just got the printing press. By King James in 1611, there are way more books in the world. Because before that you had scrolls and handwritten illuminations, all done by people in the church, because they were the only people who were educated enough to read and write and blah blah. So 2001, men who practice homosexuality, very clear homophobia, hate language as well. Okay, 2011. Okay, the new something version, I forget, it's changed to, now get this, is this better or worse? Men who have sex with men.
Yeah. Wow.
Okay, so in 2001, if you're locked in jail on a life sentence, you have sex with men, okay, it's not an abomination because you're not practicing homosexuality, you're practicing sodomy. But
okay, I get what you mean.
In 10 years later, in the 2011 NIV version of the Bible, you are an abomination because it's now just men having sex with men.
Yeah. So they broadened it completely. It doesn't matter if it's just the act of sodomy.
In 2020, there was something called the Passion Translation, okay, which apparently doesn't get talked about an awful lot, but they've changed it now to those who exploit others through sex. That's what Leviticus says now in that translation.
Oh, so it's not about men on men at all?
Not at all. Now it's basically and coercion and...
like almost like the original intention, but including women now.
But yeah, basically. So that is now the abomination. Those who exploit others through sex. But
so that's the most latest version.
That's the 2020 version of the Passion Translation, yeah.
Wow, so people that are saying, so these people that I see outside train stations and stuff, quoting Leviticus saying a man shall not sleep with a man, they're not even talking from the most updated version of their own teachings.
No, because
God, this is mad information.
It's weirdly come full circle, except it's broadened slightly more now because Paul was just talking about men. Now it's basically, essentially it's more or less saying any non-consensual sex is the abomination. That's what it's saying, by saying those who exploit others through sex. Now, whether that be economic exploitation, but any form of sexual exploitation, whether it be as I said, if you don't sleep with me, I will do this or say this or whatever.
Blackmail. Yeah,
blackmail, basically. Yes, yeah, thank you. That is what the current Passion Translation of the Bible says.
Wow.
But that's too complex a thought for a lot of people, and you can't segregate and you can't divide and conquer if your Bible says that what is wrong is non-consensual sex. Any form of consensual sex that is made in the fullest pursuit of, let's say, affection, not necessarily love, because you can have lust as well, but anything that is consensual, that is met where both minds are fully, if you shall we say, compos mentis, aware of the circumstances, then that is permissible according to the current iteration of the Bible. Anything that is not consensual in any way, shape or form, that is coerced, forced, cajoled even, chemically induced or what have you, that is the abomination. But you take that to, for example, I don't know, let's use a cliche one, but the southern states of America where homophobia is fairly rife in a lot of places. And I can say that because I've been to some of them. Okay, that is not going to fly with those people. So you've got to take into account social dogma.
And the damage of what the last 100 years of translations have done. It's like,
more than 100, but yeah.
Well, yeah, but the original sound, like, the ones going back to...
You don't the original Paul and the Aramaic.
Yeah, they weren't dangerous, yeah, but like from King John.
From King James onwards, more or less.
King James, sorry. Yeah, from King James onwards, everyone then has had instilled with them that, if you're gay, if you're having feelings for another man, you're disgusting. And it's all that trauma, the generational trauma that's come from that. And then, it's insane.
Here's the funny thing. On top of that, weirdly, the one thing we've not really sort of touched on particularly is the Bible doesn't make any mention of having romantic or sexual feelings towards other men. Doesn't say anything's wrong with that at all.
Just the act of sodomy.
Just the physical act, because that's the bit that can definitively be controlled. Because if you catch someone doing that, shall we say, you're caught.
You can't catch someone who loves men that are just sitting there.
You can't, by having two men spend a lot of time together. I mean, and again, sort of don't come at me, bro, and all that jazz. But Jesus spent a lot of time in the company of 12 men. I'm not saying they had sexual thoughts for each other, but if they did, you couldn't prove it. Whereas if you caught John in flagrante delicto with Paul or Judas or Jude or any of them, it's incontrovertible. We've seen it. It's a fact.
Men.
Exactly. Well, you are performing the sexual act, which is an abomination, sort of thing.
Wow.
But yeah, the emotional content's never addressed.
Yeah.
Which is interesting because, for the most part, other than when he said, "I come not to bring peace but a sword," Jesus was talking about love all the time.
Yeah.
So like I said, you've got to look at, maybe I'm hoping that in 100 years' time, if this Passion Translation becomes the one, people will.
It's 100 years of people reading this translation, and hopefully the homophobic energy is kind of generationally is removed.
Yeah, because you've got to take into account, the human beings are built needing a sexual outlet, and if you put two people in a room and they can't go leave for a while time, it doesn't matter if they find each other hideous. There's a fairly good chance there's going to be some nookie going on.
Yeah.
And that doesn't change their gender preference or their sexuality or whatever you want to call it. It's that need. You remember we talked about the lechery thing.
Yeah.
If you've got like a creepy old dude who's got a lot of money, they might really fancy this effeminate young man who's poor. They might even have genuine affection for them on some level.
Yeah.
But it's not consensual still.
Yeah.
So the emotional content has to be put aside for the sake of a simpler doctrine of control, if you like.
Yeah. Wow. I think we covered a lot.
Yeah. We haven't even gotten to Jesus' mum and Mary in the Aramaic there. But
yeah. I think for this section, that's powerful, man. Yeah. You're amazing.
So, no, my pleasure. Just if anyone wants to do any further reading, because I actually this is where some of my reading came from. Kathy Baldock, Walking the Bridgeless Canyon. Ed Oxford, which is just ongoing research into the Bible translation of sexuality. There's a good book called Matthew Vine's God and the Gay Christian.
Okay, perfect.
And there's a documentary that's coming out called 1946: The Mistranslation That Shifted Culture.
Wow, that sounds like everything we've been speaking about.
Yeah. Now, by the time
is it out yet?
By the time of this coming out, it might be. I don't have the exact release date. I couldn't, because there's lots of. I don't know. I kept looking and I couldn't get an exact date. I know it's.
Oh man, I'll have to come in and watch that with you. That'd be amazing.
Yeah. But I know it's forthcoming.
Okay, cool.
So, and that will probably tell us about the warnings and everything. So there you go.
Brother.